Hola clase. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre los verbos. Hello class. Today we're going to talk about verbs. So a lot of grammar that we have to learn so that we can continue to speak in Spanish. So we are going to focus only on regular present tense verbs today. The first thing that we need to understand is what is an infinitive. So an infinitive is the name of a verb. In English, you probably don't think about infinitives, but you use them all the time. If you say to speak, to run, to go, to listen, etc., those are all examples of the infinitive in English. So in this example, I need to speak with you. To speak is using the infinitive form of the verb speak. So how do we learn about infinitives in Spanish? So first of all, an easy way to recognize an infinitive form in Spanish is that all infinitives end in the letter R. Here are some examples. Hablar, correr, ir, escuchar. In the example used in the previous slide, I need to speak with you, you would say, yo necesito hablar contigo. Hablar is the infinitive, just like to speak in English. So once we know what a verb's infinitive is, from there we can begin to conjugate a verb. So the word conjugate might sound a little scary, but all it means is being able to express a verb in different forms so that you can match the subject of the sentence with whatever verb you're talking about. So in English, you do this naturally all the time. You would know how to say, I speak, you speak, he, she, or it speaks, we speak, you all speak, plural, and they speak. That is how you would conjugate the verb speak in English. One thing to note here is in English, in this verb, we change the word speak to speaks when we're talking about the third person singular. He, she, or it speaks. That little S that we put on the end is called a verb ending. So in Spanish, we're going to have to learn different verb endings so that we can conjugate the verbs. Here we have a verb chart in English. I speak, you speak, he, she, or it speaks, we speak, you speak, they speak. So this is the verb to speak conjugated in the present tense. In Spanish, we have three different types of present tense verbs. Verbs that end in AR are called AR verbs. Verbs that end in ER are called ER verbs. And verbs that end in IR are called IR verbs. Each one is going to have its own separate way of conjugating a verb. The examples we're going to use today are hablar, toser, and vivir. To speak, to cough, and to live. We're going to begin with AR verbs. These are by far the most common. So in order to conjugate an AR verb, like hablar, you would first remove the AR on the end of the verb, and then you would add one of the following endings, depending on what you're talking about and who the subject of the sentence is. O, AS, A, AMOS, or AN. Here's an example using hablar. Yo hablo, I speak. Tú hablas, you speak. Usted, él, or ella habla. You, he, she, or it speaks. Nosotros hablamos, we speak. Ustedes, ellos, ellas hablan. You speak or they speak. So as you can see from the verb hablar, the infinitive, we remove the AR, and then we add one of those endings so that we can tell who we're talking about in this sentence. For a list of common AR verbs, I want you to look up page 53 in your textbook and go over them. Moving on to ER verbs. These are also pretty common. So again, you're going to remove those final two letters when you begin to conjugate. So remove the ER and add one of the following endings: O, ES, E, EMOS, or EN, depending on what the subject is. We're going to use the verb toser, to cough. Yo toso, I cough. Tú toses, you cough. Usted, él, ella tose. You, he, she, or it coughs. Nosotros tosemos, we cough. Ustedes, ellos, ellas tosen. You cough, they cough. Now, for a list of common ER verbs, we do have a list on page 54 in your textbook that you can use for your homework assignments and any other work that we have in this class. For IR verbs, pretty easy because it's almost identical to ER verbs. The only difference is in the nosotros form. So as you can see, you're going to remove the IR and add one of the following endings. These are identical to the ER except for the IMOS. In the ER form, it was EMOS for nosotros, but in the IR verbs, you're going to use IMOS. Our example is vivir, to live. Yo vivo, I live. Tú vives, you live. Usted, él, or ella vive. You, he, she, or it lives. Nosotros vivimos, we live. Ustedes, ellos, ellas viven. You live, they live. For some common IR verbs, please look up page 55 in your textbook. And that's all I have for you today. So we are going to begin to conjugate using these verbs and practice, practice, practice. Gracias.